Great. So it's a real privilege to introduce you to Rosalyn from Open Doors, her husband Ian there, who she describes as her roadie. But thank you. I'm sure you're a lot more than that. Let's give her a round of applause.
I'll put that on. Right, you've been sitting a while. Well done. I need you to stand up for me now, if that's okay. 350 million of our brothers and sisters around the world are suffering from high or extreme persecution. These are your brothers and sisters, my brothers and sisters. We are blood relatives. The blood of Jesus connects us. So I'd like everybody whose birthday is not in January and February to sit down. So the only people left standing should have a birthday in January and February. Thank you. That's about 1 in 7 of you. 1 in 7 Christians suffer persecution. That's you guys. 1 in 7 are counting the cost. Thank you. Could you sit down, please? Could I have the slide up of counting the cost? Sorry. Yeah. And as a team, we are asking all our speakers to have this kind of focus as we talk to churches around the United Kingdom. And at the end, I'd like you to be able to say, what is the cost to you of standing for Jesus? Could I have the next slide, which is a video, please?
Could praying put you in danger? Could going to church risk your life? Could following Jesus cost you your job, your home, or your family? Around the world today, our Christian brothers and sisters are counting the cost of their faith. And these are the 5 countries where the price of following Jesus is highest. Number 5, Yemen. The very small number of Yemeni Christians must worship in secret. House church leader Salah is on the wanted list, but despite death threats, he courageously continues his ministry. At number 4 is Eritrea. Christian activities are severely restricted. When Abdullah told people about Jesus, he was sent to prison. The conditions were so terrible that he never came out alive. Libya is number 3 on the list. Libya considers itself to be a completely Islamic nation. Libyan believers who tell others about Jesus risk arrest and violent opposition. Number 2, Somalia. In this highly restrictive Islamic society, even the suspicion of being a Christian is extremely dangerous. Converts who are discovered may instantly pay with their lives. And at number 1, North Korea. This remains the most costly place in the world to be a Christian. Even owning a Bible is illegal. Jiho's father was taken away when security agents discovered his secret book. She never saw him again. Christians are sent to appalling labor camps or simply killed on the spot. More than 365 million Christians face high levels of persecution and discrimination. That's 1 in 7 Christians globally, and every one of them a son or daughter, a mother, a father, a child of God. For nearly 70 years, Open Doors has been supporting our persecuted church family, helping them to stand strong. They are counting the cost of following Christ, and with your help, they can keep believing, knowing that Jesus is worth everything.
Jiho vividly remembers the moment she saw her father for the last time. He was dragged away. North Korean security agents had ransacked their home. They didn't find what they were looking for in the house, but they found it in the garden. They found the book wrapped in plastic, Jiho recalls. One of the policemen came inside, holding it. He kicked over our small table as we cowered in the corner, flinging dishes everywhere, and threw the book down at my father's feet. Only years later did she realize that the book was a Bible. You see, there was another hidden item in Jiho's house that the secret police didn't find: her father's radio. It was hidden behind the portrait of the North Korean leaders. In every home, the images hang in pride of place, and one day, Jiho began listening and came across a news station, and she realized with a start that they were talking about the same wise man that her father had told her about, the one who was in the secret book, and they called him Jesus. Could I have the next slide, please? So we're going to look at Daniel chapter 3, verses 1 to 28. And where we're picking up the story, it's around 585 BC. It's over 20 years since Nebuchadnezzar had ransacked Jerusalem, taking prisoners into exile, including Daniel and his friends. What they stood for in Daniel chapter 1 has forged them to be faithful and resilient in a culture opposed to God. Even after years of cultural indoctrination in the Babylonian system, they're still standing to be counted. Babylon was a cultural hub, pleasure without limits. In the Bible, it's the archetype of excess. Everything God and his kingdom is not. But here these young men refuse to compromise. They make a stand. Remember in chapter 1, Daniel turning down the fine wine and the lavish food that was offered to the Babylonian gods? Their names had been changed, but their hearts were still God's. And this was a line they weren't willing to cross. Here in chapter 3, we see them still standing, a life lived faithfully for God in exile. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are the last ones standing. In fact, they're the only ones standing. So this morning, I'd like to draw some examples, some thoughts from their example, to help us stand, to be willing to count the cost and faithfully follow Jesus right here, even if it means we're the only ones standing. And we need to be able to learn from those counting the cost in the most extreme ways around the world in the persecuted church. And the first thing they remind us of is that only one God is worthy of worship. In Daniel, this chapter 3, we've got a front row seat to a dedication ceremony. A large-scale worship service is taking place on a great plain. Thousands of people, all the great and good of the Babylonian Empire, are gathering. It's the great reveal of Nebuchadnezzar's statue. We're told the dimensions in verse 1 of this chapter: 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. Anybody working cubits these days? Not a lot. I'm afraid I'm still in feet and inches. So it's 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and it's going to be visible for miles around. And the instruction is given when the band plays, and aren't the band great here? They're wonderful. But this band is just off the scale of numbers of people. But when they play, you bow down. It's a sign of loyalty and of worship. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Imagine being a Christian in North Korea today. Your experience is strikingly similar. Living in a totalitarian state, North Korea is in fact the most dangerous place in which to be a Christian at the moment, ranked yet again number 1 on our World Watch list. On the screen here, you can see a smaller version of the map that I have on the floor, and it ranks the 50 most costly places in which to be a Christian. North Korea is dubbed a prison camp nation for its 26 million inhabitants. The portraits of your dear leaders hang in pride of place in your home. Their names are among the first you learn. You give thanks to them before you eat a meal. In school, you learn reading, writing, and spying, especially on your family. And in Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, you'll find bronze statues 72 feet high. You might remember seeing them in the film, of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. They were the former leaders, and they are worshipped like gods. People queue up in reverence and bow in devotion before the statues. It's what Nebuchadnezzar longed for. But only one God is worthy of worship. And that's why North Korean believers like Jiho defy their dictator and dare to follow Jesus. She says, our leaders don't want us to worship anyone or anything besides them. I've realized that's why my father was taken away. They saw he had a Lord that was bigger than our country's leaders. Incredibly, more and more North Koreans are encountering Jesus and deciding to follow him, knowing the cost. Some, like Jiho, are hearing about it through radio broadcasts. We broadcast from outside North Korea, and we reach thousands of North Koreans every day. As they count the cost, they are counting on us for prayer and support. Every prayer, every gift makes a real difference. Do come and see me at the end if you want to stand alongside them. I've got a load of stuff over there, and I'm happy to show how you can do that. Back to chapter 3. So we've got this great big event, lots of people, all the great and the good, all sorts of razzmatazz, and in contrast, 3 young men stand calm, unpretentious, and will only worship one God, a far greater king than Nebuchadnezzar. They are willing to defy a dictator, knowing the cost. Bow or burn. When the music plays, they're the only ones standing. Can you imagine the deadly silence on the plain as the ceremony is brought to a dramatic halt? All eyes are not on Nebuchadnezzar, nor his statue. They're on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as they stand to be counted. They will not bow down to anyone but God. In a furious rage, Nebuchadnezzar demands their worship, their attention, their devotion, once again, or they will face the fiery furnace. And this is their response in verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. They are declaring to the most powerful man in the world, we don't answer to you. Despite the threat of persecution, above all, they want the honor and the glory to go to God. They will not bow down. For us, much can distract and get in the way. Stuff that takes God's place. Many of us will have functional gods or idols in our lives that tug on our hearts. Perhaps it's the voice of others, peer pressure, pleasure, popularity, bowing to cultural values and norms. Perhaps it's acquiring possessions and stuff, or how we use our time. There's a battle to dethrone Jesus from our lives, a battle for our worship. We're at risk of being influenced by today's culture to believe big is better, Gold is glorious, and to accumulate as much human approval as possible. Back to chapter 3. By the end of it, all eyes are on God, not on the image, not on Nebuchadnezzar, and not even on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Finally, Nebuchadnezzar stands with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and declares in verse 28, they trusted in God and defied the king's command and were willing to give their lives rather than worship any god except their own God. Only one God is worthy of worship. So let's be encouraged by these three and their example of trust. They're able to stand firm because they have complete, unswerving trust in God, no matter what. This is a God who is worth living and dying for. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have the trust and the faith to say to the most powerful man in the earth, we don't serve you, we serve God. Look at verse 17. Our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. If you want a definition of trust, here it is. Even if it means laying down their lives and everything they have, they know that God is able to deliver, but if not, we will stand. We will not bow down to idols. Here are three powerful words to transform life and faith. But if not. Their standing, their worship, their devotion is not dependent on deliverance. It's a trust that God has got it, no matter the outcome. A trust, a faith that is not conditional on God answering all our wants and needs when we want it. Like, I'll trust God if he delivers on my shopping list. Real, complete trust is living for Jesus, no matter the cost or the circumstances. Could I have the next slide, please? This quote is from a young Yemeni man, Saleh, and he's saying, if we sit at home and do nothing, we would be safe. But what kind of Christians would we be if we weren't risking our life for others to know life? This is a man who has been imprisoned, threatened, lost people, had to flee his country. What would we be if we weren't risking our lives? And this trust has been forged through the trials of hardships, persecution, and suffering. Often when things don't turn out the way you hoped or planned, it's a trust that says, I will still choose to trust you, God, no matter what. I believe God can deliver me, but if not, I will still trust him. And finally, we're going to encounter the God who stands in the fire. Where's Jesus in this passage? He's in the fire. In the high drama of this story, Jesus is present. He's right there. In fact, he's never far from any of us. Verse 25, Nebuchadnezzar said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. This tells us something. God is present with his people in distress, in the worst of trials, in the midst of fire, of persecution, and whatever we go through. In Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's moment of greatest trial, Jesus comes and accompanies them through it. If we want to find God, there's a good chance we will find him with the broken, the suffering, and the persecuted. Whatever you are going through, Whatever challenges you face, Jesus is with you too. And maybe you can't see it. However, you are loved. And there is a God who stands in the fire with you, with each of us. And the call on us is to follow Jesus by getting into the furnace in prayer and support with the persecuted church, because that's where he is. Few of us will ever have to face a 90-foot gold statue or extreme persecution, but the choice to stand up to be counted is real for each one of us. We're going to be forced at different points to choose between Jesus and the world, our version of Babylon. Forced to choose between worshipping God or other idols that tug at our hearts. Will we stand to be counted and recognize Jesus is worth everything? Could I have the next slide, please? Could you just leave it up there for now? Thank you. Persecution is real and intensifying. So today I invite you to stand with your brothers and sisters like Jeho, who are in the heat of the fire. They desperately need your prayers to know that they aren't alone. We have so much to learn from them, how to stand firm through suffering and enjoy God's presence in painful trials. They need us, but we need them too. When you hear stories of Christians like Jeho, it stirs your heart, and it does mine, to want to make a difference. Every bit of support and prayer strengthens them to stand strong in the midst of extreme persecution. They're counting on us to stand with them, to stand as family. We would love you to stay connected with us at Open Doors. Around on your chairs, there are a number of these cards. And if you fill out the details on the back, you can receive latest prayer requests and updates and stories to stir your faith. And if you wish, you can pray with us. And if you're moved to support Open Doors financially, then you can do that also using the card and come and speak to me afterwards. Could I have the final slide, please? Please stand if you're willing and able. So it won't have escaped your attention that on the floor in front of me is quite a big map. And what it is, it's a big version of the map that you have been seeing up there. And along the front are over 50 tea lights. And I'd like us to take a moment to quietly respond. I'd like to invite you to come forwards, to take a tea light, switch it on, and place it on one of the countries highlighted. When you have placed a tea light, please will you return to your seats, get into small groups, and we're going to have a time of prayer so that you can pray. And I've put some pointers up there to help you. But however the Spirit leads you to pray, please pray. Thank you. And please come forward now.
Yeah, do come forward. Excuse me, do come forward right now. And thank you, Rosalyn, for that challenge. As you come forward, I'm just going to pray over us now. Lord Jesus, how your heart must break when you see the persecution and the suffering. We thank you that you are a God who knows exactly what it's like to suffer, because you gave your all, your very life for us. Lord, I pray for us that you will stir us up as your church to be those who have a resilient faith, those who say, my God is able, but even if he doesn't deliver me in this particular way or that particular way, I still know he will come through, that he is good and he is worthy of all our worship. Stir us up as a church to have faith like that young man who said, what sort of Christian would I be like if I wasn't giving my life so that others could know? And right now we just pray over every single nation, every single brother and sister who is standing up and counting the cost. May they know your presence, deep comfort and strength in the fire. We thank you that that is where you are at. Your presence, your deliverance, your peace, but also your gospel breaking forth in every nation, tribe and tongue.